All right. And so I guess just the ongoing, or I guess reopening the investigation into the Wuhan lab. I don't think there's really too much more to say about it. Like, I think the plausibility of this virus coming from a lab has already been established. Whether or not it did, I think is irrespective, or not irrespective, but it matters less that it it happened in the lab, because there's evidence to show that the Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, knew that people were getting sick at this lab and continued to allow it to stay open and do this type of, I guess, research or experimentation on viruses. And so it's really just a question of, in my opinion, it's really just a question of not being able to trust the Chinese Communist Party with sensitive information. And so I think an investigation, another investigation into the Wuhan Institute of Virology is really just pointless. I know some people are saying that Fauci is a bad faith actor in this, but it really just goes to show that he knew, at least through freedom of information, that his emails, that he knew exactly what they were doing at this lab, which flew in the face of widespread condemnation from other scientists and other virologists, that this research is very dangerous. And that's actually one of the reasons why the Obama administration had, prohibited this type of research in the United States, because, these things get out, and, you know, they they have the potential of killing people. And so for Fauci to try to pretend like he had no clue of that, or try to um, uh, try to in some way make it seem as though it was less likely that this could have come from a lab, is just irresponsible. And his whole defense of people attacking him as an attack on science, or he is science, is really just nonsensical, because the science is really out. The jury's really out on whether or not is really, it's just really out on whether or not this came from a lab. And those who say that it did, were kind of, downplayed or not taken seriously. So even Dr. Fauci didn't take the opinion of the quote unquote experts seriously either. And so it really just flies in the face of the fact that he's somehow being persecuted for science, for the sake of science, is just nonsensical, because he himself didn't take the science seriously, that this could have come from a lab. And if it did come from a lab, what were some of the measures that could have been taken to prevent this so-called spread of it, instead of covering it up as they did? And so Dr. Fauci, actually helped fund indirectly the research that went into gain of function, which helped researchers to take these viruses that are found in bats and, I guess, in layman's terms, supercharge them in such a way that scientists wanted to figure out how they could destroy them, or, you know, kill them essentially. And so Dr. Fauci kind of played his hand very wrongly, at least in my estimation, that the lab leak is still a possibility in many people's mind. And whether or not it was a bioweapon, I don't believe that to be the case. Because if it wasn't indeed a like, there's way more things out there that are more contagious than SARS-2 or COVID-19, that could kill a lot more people. Um, and so it just really, I don't think it was intended to be a bioweapon. I don't think it happened by chance either, that this thing got out in the very place or region of China where these things get out. And even China's assertion that it came from the U.S. military. Well, the U.S. military does do biological weapon experiments. And yeah, just like anything else, like there is mishaps that happen, and those things do uh, get out. And so, it's but it's documented. It's we know, okay, this particular agent or what have you may have gotten out, but um it didn't necessarily cause the damage that Corona 19 did, or at least didn't cause as much damage, or due to the inaction of government. Government usually tries to contain these type of things. You see it in the agricultural industry. You see it in consumer uh, protections and things like that, where most of these things are taken off out of the public, and they're documented. In China, that's not really so much the case because there's not a willingness to capitulate mistakes and things like that. So just looking at some more, and Congress has kind of grilled Fauci on that, most notably Rand Paul. Excuse me, Rand Paul. But it's just like, yeah, he's probably the most credible person to do that, but it really is not saying much in the manner in which he, um, I guess, attacked Fauci, because the government, funds these, you know, third parties that these bureaucrats and things like that, who have say over billions or millions if not billions of dollars of funding. It goes around, and it really is life and death for a lot of these organizations and a lot of these researchers and scientists to get that funding. And so, at least from the standpoint of Dr. Fauci, he was just doing something that was routine. And so I don't think you can really fault him, but the fact that he knew that people were getting sick at this lab, and that there was a potential SARS-like virus that was, propagating in China and rapidly spreading to the rest of the world. I think it was just a dereliction of duty that he didn't pipe up to say it. But he's taking his livelihood on this gain of function research, and so I think there are better ways to do these type of things, and we have to be careful, because I think especially with the different variants of coronavirus coming out now, there's um, just no way to stop it. And so, it's just something that most of the world isn't equipped to deal with, and I think it's just irresponsible that Dr. Fauci uh, did not look further into you know didn't look further into whether or not these type of viruses and things would be dangerous at all. And so, whether you're following the money and you look at all these things that Dr. Fauci did verily, and I've always said that, like, I said it back in early well, I guess late 2000, that he's going to go down as the villain of this whole episode, because he didn't really do anything. He kind of downplayed some of the measures that were taken across the country and in various states, where he said wearing masks wasn't this, and he said wearing masks isn't effective. He said it. He only said that because he didn't want people to stop. There didn't want to be a shortage of masks, and it goes to a wider point that a lot of these things should, masks, these type of experiments and things like that should be better regulated in the United States. It shouldn't really be left up to China or the more or other developing countries to do these type of things, because the potential of catastrophic mistakes being made are possible. And so I'm not saying that the United States is the beacon of safety and security, but it lends to see that China standards are much, much less than what we would consider in the West and in the United States as well. So, not to placate either one, but it's just really a mess of how this all was handled, especially at the end of Dr. Fauci, just coming as just essentially a bad faith actor. I do believe in the science. I do believe that there are theories that um, are needed to be further looked into, whether they are uh, essentially um, good or bad. I think they should be followed to their logical conclusion. And my logical conclusion is that the coronavirus did not come from nature. There's much, much evidence to show that. And so, whether, Facebook or YouTube censored me for saying that, it doesn't really matter because the evidence is there. If Facebook or YouTube wants to censor me for that, it's well established now that the coronavirus, albeit a real virus that could be found in nature, there are elements of it that look manufactured or man-made. Just the spread of it, the fact that so many people got sick so rapidly without any, um, I guess, without any like patient zero or source of infection or I guess contagion, it would be a better way of saying it, proves that it didn't really come from nature. I had family members telling me like if it came from nature, why aren't the people that's eating bats or another animal? I guess the link animal, which some people consider to be the pangolin. It's this little kind of arboreal creature. It looks kind of like an aardvark or an anteater, and it's just like why weren't people getting sick from that? And so it really just plays into this whole thing of what conspiracy theories think that they're out to kill us or you know create some false flag or something like that. But no, it's just a simple fact of I believe that at this institute, which was and that's another thing, this institute was funded by the United States taxpayers, um, and they were doing experiments. They experimented on this virus, supercharged it in such a way that it would be resistant or able to survive certain conditions, and it somehow escaped. Doctors in China were warning about this such event, and so it escaped. The CCP, along with members of the American, you know, uh, scientific community, i.e., Dr. Fauci and others, uh, covered it up and sort of, allow this thing to propagate and, you know, out into the public. And, you know, whether governments responded adequately is up to debate, but I think that the United States definitely did not act adequately to this disease. And the proof in that is that we've had more uh, deadly, more infectious diseases in recent years that didn't kill as many people. I think the body count now for coronavirus is over 3 million. We had SARS, which only killed, I believe, like estimates of under 10,000 people, but that's because the contagion, the ability to contain it was so much more uh, cognizant and aware of something like this happening. And also with Ebola was something that happened and actually does happen in nature, and people were able to contain that. So that's just my conclusion on what the coronavirus happened. The whole saga of it is, and Dr. Fauci, I think, is just a bad faith actor who has been shown to be a complete partisan to the highest degree. And so I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to him, but you should take whatever he says with a grain of salt.